Nope, nope, that's not it. I just clicked on the wrong channel. I can see us. Looks like we're live. I'm just trying to get to audio.
Yeah, it looks like we're live. There's just an ad that I have to watch.
I think that we're live. Hold on. Trying to. I'm trying to get the following. Where is. I'm not showing up. Is that? No, it's not. There it is. Okay. I think we're live.
We sure are, John. I see our faces on Twitch right now.
Alright. I can't hear you just yet, but I heard myself. So we'll at least get the intro out of the way. Hello, and thank you so much for joining us for World Salad, a bi weekly world building show brought to you by the LITT, Long Island Tabletop Streaming Network. I am your host, as always, John, and joining me is my plucky young sidekick, Jonah.
I really thought we were more of like partners, John, but I guess I'm just your
Well, I
sidekick.
mean, how
Hi
much,
there, I'm Jonah.
Jonah, how much older am I than you?
I was born in 1995.
So I would have been 9. So there's almost a decade difference between the two of us.
And
No, I mean, I could just start dropping movie names, and you could just tell me which ones you haven't seen, which is pretty much all of
John,
them.
that's not fair to me because you could name movies from last year, and I'm like, what? What are you talking about? I've never heard of this.
It's like The Sopranos. What? Anyway,
I've never watched The Sopranos.
neither did I. But moving on. No, but the World Salad is a world building show where we improvise, conceptualize, and develop all kinds of things for role playing games, tabletop games, anything you could think of. And Jonah, why don't you tell us what's on the agenda tonight?
Yeah, so I am running a home game for my friends that I run every now and again, and we're nearing the end of our campaign. Um, Not like due to lack of interest or anything, but because we're just reaching the natural conclusion of the story. And my thought process is like we'll take a break for a little bit, and then we'll just hop into a new campaign using the same system more or less.
Still
And the
using
new
Into
camp
the Odd?
Yeah, although I'm actually hacking it pretty hard. I'm turning it into like something a bit more like complicated and involved than that, but not super worth going into right now. It's still a work in progress.
Well, Into
Uh,
the Odd, it's what is it like an old school D&D clone, or is it a
it's
more of like an Apocalypse World kind of knockoff? Like,
it's super rules light and based on D&D. Like the reason it's called Into the Odd is like it because odd is ODD into the
right,
original D&D. It's a super rules light game. There are 4 stats if you're including your hit points, and a lot of it is just like yeah, what you're doing works, or make a quick die roll to see if it resolves,
I don't know
and it's just
why,
like
but
go go go.
every time I hear Into the Odd or I think about Into the Odd, I also think about, or at least my brain automatically goes to Stars Without Numbers.
I think because they both like have the kind of old OSR feel, but like we can do this better kind of way. Because compared to Lamentations of the Flame Princess or Sword and Wizardry, which are more or less just one-to-one copies of older editions, they're both like, what if we took all the parts of or like old school D&D that we liked and change things around to make it better for us?
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, this is not buy Into the Odd or play it, or rather buy the guy's new book, Electric Bastion Land. It's all fantastic. But so while I'm still working on this new setting, I'm kind of thinking like, how do I best prepare my players for the transition? Because they are extremely powerful within the setting now. And when they start the new campaign, they're going to be starting in a totally different setting at level 1, or like the equivalent to level 1. And I'd like to open this up as a forum, John. Like, what do you think I can do to help reset my players' expectations for a whole new world and a whole new experience?
Well, I think think the thing about role playing is that it's a lot of it is about telling stories as the characters or with the characters. So even if you go from a high level campaign to a low level campaign, it's a bit of a jar. I'm sorry, that
Mhm.
it's a bit. Ooh, sorry, I got agita there. It's a bit of a jarring experience, but
Mhm.
at the very least, though, as long as they're aware that this is a new story that's going to be happening, it's just one of those things you kind of have to like go with when you're developing stuff, you know.
Yeah, no, totally. And like, I guess I'm not too much worried that they're not gonna get the fact that it's new and they have to like, you know, change their expectations.
Well,
It's more of like, have you ever been in a long campaign where you get to like level 20 in D&D or like even a lower level, and then you make a new character and it's level 1 and you're like, oh man, I feel like something's missing.
no, but I mean, also like think about video games. Like, there's plenty
Mhm.
of video games where you beat the video games or you get to the end and you're doing all this crazy stuff, and then even if you end up replaying that same video game, you start back at square one. You know,
Yeah.
like so it's just granted, like thematically it can be a bit tricky because again, it's one of those things where you're playing as you're basically creating like normal people and you're elevating them almost to gods, and then
Yeah.
at some point you have to lower them down and drop them down. It's just going to happen, but again, it's a new story. It's a whole new experience. So it's that suspension of disbelief that you encounter with everything.
Mhm.
You don't watch The Terminator and then think all of the movies are not as good because they all don't have killer robots in them. I mean, I do, but
Well, some people, I'm sure some people do, and that's totally valid. Yeah,
anyway.
but
So why don't you tell me about?
I get what you're saying, where it's like, we don't play role playing games, or at least a lot of us don't play these games just to feel like we're unstoppable. We play these games because we want to tell an interesting story, and I think what I'm going to focus on and what I'd recommend for any new DM to focus on is if you're making that kind of drastic switch after the end of a campaign or even like in the middle of one if you need to take a breather, focus on getting your players invested in the story and their enjoyment of the game will follow.
So let me ask you a question then. With this new thing you're building, you doing a session zero?
Character creation, even with my hacking a bit, is so fast that I kind of plan on rolling session 0 directly into like session 1.
But like, what about like? So let me ask you this: are you taking any input from your players into as to what you're building with the world itself?
I'm not. I I think my style of DMing, and this is not going to work for everyone, is such that I like to craft an initial experience. Like I personally like to know how my session 1 is going to go, and then everything beyond that is strictly based on the players and their input and their characters' actions.
Are you telling the players anything about the setting or the world in advance before they sit down to play so that they could inform the character based on that?
I am, yeah. Like I'm telling them like so for the longtime D&D nerds out there, I am in this is very loosely inspired by the Dark Sun campaign setting. Like it's a desert world, very brutal, resources are light. And I will tell them straight up, your character can be whoever you want, but they have to end up before session 1 being like a scavenger. Because what I want the first session to go is they're all scavengers. They're going to go on a scavenging mission. It's not going to go well.
Okay. That kind of reminds me of how last episode that we did we were talking about that jail world, the place
Yeah.
where people are imprisoned. So I was thinking about something similar, whereas if I was actually going to try to run that, how would your character end up in jail? Like, it doesn't matter.
Mhm.
I think the better question is not how did you get to jail, why are you in jail?
Yeah.
And it's a matter of like, and not necessarily like not imprisoned. Why are you in this jail?
Hmm.
Because those are two very different statements. Being imprisoned somewhere, like you said, being a scavenger could be, like what happened that you are doing this, or why do you do this, and how does that shake loose? because again, it's one of those things of informing the players of like, your backstory is important and can have a play here, but you have to also understand that like if somebody wants to play a king, you can't just say, well, you're the king. Let's start with that, from the get go.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think going into that, I am definitely planning on giving them some like basic information of the setting before they even touch a die for generating characters. And the basic premise is they're in this desert world, and the specific region that they're in is in the middle of this like generational war between these four different families that are all vying for the land and like who can control the most oases in this desert.
Right.
I'm going to
Okay.
make it specifically mentioned that these players are starting in a neutral oasis. Like this is not land claimed by any of the families for one reason or another. And they can kind of do with that what they will. I kind of expect at least one person to be like, oh, I'm like a lost child of one of the four families, and like not even I know that.
Could one of the
Or
players
some
be a
like,
Could one of the players be a killer robot? Jonah?
yes,
Okay.
yes, they can.
Could one of the players be a killer robot that they don't know that they're a killer robot?
That is how they would be a killer robot.
Awesome.
Because Into the Odd as a game likes to marry like the science part of like the science fiction part of fantasy with the fantasy part of fantasy. And in my games, I'm all about that as well. And I'm not changing that with this like hacked up rule system. I really like there being like typical fantasy trappings and then atypical fantasy
Do
trappings
you have like a
like
twist
together.
system? Because like I remember like one of the recent D&D books that came out last year during COVID. The what was it? Rhyme of the Frost Maiden.
Yeah.
Like they had like secrets, and there was like a couple of secrets, but they were kind of very
Oh.
specific to the book itself. Well, not to the book itself, but just like there was a certain like there was 20 of them, and they were very specific in that it's like okay, like these maybe you could tweak them a little bit, but I like the idea of like a secret system of like you're actually a clone, or
Yeah.
you are actually a parasite piloting a body that nobody else knows about it, or
Yeah,
you
because
know
I've seen stuff like that in other games like Paranoia or like the whole game of what's it called? Ah man, I can't think of it. It's a game with no DM. Everyone like pick you all pick like a scenario to be in, and you make characters based off the scenario.
you talking about what? You talking about oh God, Fiasco?
Fiasco. Ah man, I haven't thought about that game
That's
in
more
like
of an improv game though, only because like you are essentially you're creating connections and you're setting scenes and then you start acting them out.
yeah, but the thing I was getting at is like when you're making characters based off prompts, like one of the prompts can be like, "What's a secret you have?" or like, "How do you know the person to your left or right?" Stuff like that.
Right.
So I understand using like I understand having a more like meta mechanic where it's like, what's something about your character that they might not even know about themselves.
That's cool. It's cool.
Yeah,
But so, what's some stuff that you're still working on in the campaign? That'd be a good thing to try to flesh out. With
I
tonight. You have
I
anything that
guess
you're kind of
like
like struggling with, or anything that you're like
yeah,
putting together?
I'm still very much working on that very first session because in my head I have it where it goes like they're in the scavenging town. They get sent to a mission. They go to the ruin. They find the secret artifact that they weren't supposed to, and then trouble happens. And I guess my main worry is like I don't know if that's enough meat for the first session. Or better yet, because in my head they're doing a dungeon crawl, maybe the question is how do you make a dungeon crawl interesting?
Well, I guess part of it is, I mean, in dungeon crawls, like depending on the combat system, can be a bit dry. So I think you have to find good ways of balancing out. I guess what do you want to accomplish with this first session? Even if you don't get all the way there, what do you want the first session to act to be?
Mm-hmm. So a mechanic that I'm introducing that isn't native to Into the Odd and that the players definitely will not know about is Because the setting is based off of Dark Sun, the characters will have the ability to develop psionic abilities. And I want there to be, at the very end of the dungeon crawl, I want them to find like a hidden room where they find a secret artifact that awakens their psionic talent. And I kind of want the session to end either right there or with them returning back to their home base right afterwards.
So in that case, then their first session can't be too long because you don't want to have it where they end up getting, bumbling around and then end up having to oh, you either have to rush this in really quick or you don't get to develop it the way that you'd like to. So that's kind of difficult. But I mean, rather than doing like a dungeon crawl, well, I mean, dungeon crawl, like when I think dungeon crawl, I think of like larger dungeons, mapping things out and things like that. You plan on just having them go to some location, basically.
Yeah, like in my head, it's like the ruins of some like mansion or something. So it's not going to have like any higher levels, but it could have like some basements.
All right, so I mean, well, what I would think about doing is, what about basing it off of an actual real life thing?
Okay.
Maybe not architecture, maybe not in an architectural sense, but think of like, let's say you wanted to base it off of a library, like a realistic library. You would have like a main lobby, you'd have a
Mm-hmm.
couple of wings, maybe an archive room or like a microfiche room. Um, Jonah, what's microfiche?
Microfiche is like a film thing
Okay,
that you
close
can
enough. I
like.
I honestly was hoping that I'd trip you up and you wouldn't know what microfiche is,
No,
but
it's like a super duper microscope that you use to like
yeah.
read newspapers and stuff.
Good, 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 good. But yeah, so think about like where, like, okay. So they plan on finding something that gives them psionic powers. Now,
Mm-hmm.
where does psionics originate in this world that you've created?
So okay, this is gonna get weird. I, so I know I said when it comes to campaigns, I like to plan out the first session and let my players do the rest of my work. When I'm building a setting, for whatever reason, I like to think of what's the final thing my players could encounter if they scoured the whole place. And this would be the only dragon in the world named Dre, Desert Monarch, that is the actual singular ruler of the entire plane of existence that they're on. Because not really a twist, but a revelation they'll find out is that the desert world that they're living on is only like one quadrant in a larger area.
So it's one of those things where they just haven't explored too far out there. They just think that this is all there is. Now,
Yeah.
like the dragons in this place where you plan on having them go in the first session, or you just mean like if they just wander the
No, no,
desert?
no, no. Like the dragon is like hidden end boss kind of thing. Like
How is the dragon connected to psionics?
the dragon is the source of psionics. Uh, Dragons used to be where psionics come. Basically, I'm instead of magic, I'm having it be psionics essentially because in my mind, psionics are more of like an internal thing that you can develop and like tweak with, whereas magic is more of a field thing that you study. Just to me.
Are the
And
dragons, are they natural? Like, do they occur in nature? Are they man-made, or are they like an evolution of something?
dragons are actual manifestations of like psionic talent coalesced into being. And if
But
you were to
how is
defeat,
it that then psionics comes from dragons if dragons are just a physical manifestation of the power itself?
that's actually a great question. And now I'm realizing it's an inherent contradiction. Huh. I hadn't thought about that. I
I mean, I
maybe
mean, that's
in
not necessarily wrong to have this thing of like, there's this paradoxical force of like,
mhm.
something occurred, this thing was created, this thing is the reason why this stuff is there, but this stuff is only there because this thing exists, but this thing only exists because it is the physical manifestation of this stuff.
Mhm.
That's like some
Um
Stephen King stuff there.
yeah, I don't want to turn into a hack too much. Not that Stephen King's a
No,
hack,
I'm
but
not saying
like
like I'm not saying it's a hack. It's just that you might have to get a little bit more cerebral with it, with the idea that like dragons aren't exactly. You probably would end up being that they would be even more rare than you're talking about, because if they are the physical representation of psionic energy, then it's,
Hmm.
unless psionics is widespread, A, there shouldn't be that many dragons around, B, people
Yeah,
should very rarely see them, and C, people who have psionics, probably because it's so paradoxical in nature, probably should either have some major repercussions or blowbacks, or maybe don't live long because of this stuff.
well,
And
that's the
not
thing.
because it's and
There's
not because
only
it's like
one
it's
dragon.
so there's only one.
There's only one, and my, I guess,
What if
initial
it's not even a
hypothesis.
what if it's not even a dragon, but just like the way that like your brain can't even perceive? All right, here's a great idea.
Hmm.
Why don't you do something like, to those who have psionic energy, those who are psionic? Well, okay. Can people who are not psionic even perceive the dragon?
People who do not have psionic talent
Yes.
or have not been awakened cannot perceive psionics. Period.
So the dragon is basic now, but can the dragon still physically interact with people if they are not awakened psionically? Like, is it just like, somebody would just be like walking in a field and all of a sudden just get yeeted up into the air and fly around, or just pulverized out of like nothingness?
Yes, the dragon can still do that, although it likely wouldn't, just
All
because
right,
it would ignore anyone who's not awakened.
so what I mean by that then is, all right, so you have something that is a physical representation of something. It's not actually real. It's just the way that people perceive it.
Hmm.
Um, it
And
can't be
also,
interacted with, but it also can't. It can interact with the world around it, but it often will not.
mhm.
Mm,
And my thinking is, because I want this dragon to somehow be connected to the source of psionics in this realm, it cannot be affected by lesser psionic abilities.
so I mean, I think what you need to do is, based on what you're describing, I think I would go a little bit more heavy into it, because I think what you're
Hmm.
talking about, there's some neat ideas there, but I think you need to really cut loose with it. So like,
Okay.
I like the idea of what is causing psionics, or what is causing psychic powers to basically just be, physically represented. Am I saying that?
Represented, physically
Thank you. I know
represented.
it's been a long day. Um,
I feel that.
like, I like the idea that, like, okay, psionic power exists. It exists because there's this force here, but there's the only reason why this force is here is because it's like this self-fulfilling kind of thing.
Hmm.
I like the idea of it being that it's not even like an actual dragon, but rather it is just psionic energy, just manifested in some
Yeah,
kind of a physical form.
I actually think that works very well with the way I'm doing psionics in the setting, because a thing I haven't told you about is every scion who has mastered at least two abilities can then develop their own like personal manifestation of psionic energy, because the psionic talents aren't always obvious. They can then like say, I am like a scion who has like several abilities pertaining to fire, like generating fire, moving fire, all that stuff. Like, can be like, once I have mastered two fire abilities, I am a fire soul. Like, this is what I am, and all my further abilities will be fire based. So I then kind of like the idea that for this dragon, the dragon itself is just the personal manifestation of the psionic power of the world itself.
All right. So again, what if it's just a matter of this force itself is like something that's almost like, again, it's like a paradox.
Mm-hmm.
It's not even that it's actual psychic powers, but like you're altering reality itself. Like you're physically changing the reality around yourself, and that's what's causing these psionic manifestations.
Mm-hmm.
This quote unquote dragon is just the force made physical, and it's the greatest
Yeah,
concentration of it. So, okay, I think we got a little bit off topic about talking about where the psionics came
a
from,
little little bit.
but
Yeah.
let's kind of circle it back then. So, if these people are going somewhere where they're going to awaken in a psionic sense, but the
Hmm.
dragon only goes, or at least presents itself to people who are already awakened, what in this place is going to cause them to awaken, number one, and number two, why would it be in this specific place to begin with?
Yeah, those were so. I definitely didn't have an answer for why the thing was there, and I think I was gonna do the lazy DM thing of like, oh, if they suggest something, then down the road I'll be like, ah, it was that all along.
I
Um,
have a thought. I don't know if you'd want to go with this, but this might sound crazy.
no, do tell.
What if psionics is a disease? Like, what if it's an actual
Ooh.
illness, and as a result, like it's yeah, like it could just be like almost like a form of cancer, where like somebody like, and that's why what brings it out is like one guy had developed this weird abnormal tumor. He, essentially, like again, not even that like if you, I mean, if you want to get really like crazy, like like galaxy brain about it, the dragon could think it's the guy, but it's not. It's just his. It's just you know, essentially his. I was having a conversation with Dan, and we were talking about ghosts and what he think ghosts are, and he was eschewing to the belief or the theory that ghosts are more like a physical a psychic manifestation of memories and thoughts, like an echo. It's not even like an actual thing with a soul or a living entity. It's just like this consciousness leaving a scar in the world that it's left behind. So what if it's something like that, where this this guy had this weird abnormal disease or affiliation affliction, and something happened, and then as a result, it's created this weird thing that is just growing and getting bigger, but also has the ability to spread and is
Yeah,
contagious in some extent.
yeah, I really like that because my initial thinking of what would be that awakens them is it would be some kind of like weird alien or like
Oh,
almost
hold on.
arcane.
Actually, I need those boxes. Well, yeah, because I'm going to be shipping some stuff. Sorry, it's okay. Sorry about that.
That's all good. But yeah, I was thinking like it would be some kind of weird like arcane or alien like tome or book. And now you got me thinking, what if that's just a red herring? What if like it's the dust between the pages that carries like this pathogen in it that awakens them?
What if the place that they go to is a hospital? What if it's just like literally a hospital that's buried out in the Yemeni
Yo,
desert?
oh my god, that's a great like I don't even want to call it like a twist. Like that's a great like uh not Easter egg. What's the word where you're like
Twist?
foreshadowing? It's good foreshadowing.
Okay. And yeah, it could be that the thing that they find, like they don't know what it is. It's like this weird glowing like glass that's like, when it catches the light, it turns these weird shades that they haven't seen before. And meanwhile, all it is it's literally like blood samples. It's like, they find like a blood lab where like these, those, where you put like something in between two panes of glass and like you observe
Mm-hmm.
it under a microscope. But of course, because these people don't know no better, they're probably touching it. Granted, whether they
Mm-hmm.
touch it, you want to make it even better. Here's something that might not, depending on how well you want to throw this on your players. Not all of them have to be psionics. You could just simply say like, if anybody touches this stuff with like, you could make it where some people are immune or some people are resistant, and like, it's this thing where like, yeah, because Traveler does that. Like, not everybody is psychic in Traveler. You just could what you could do
True.
is like, are you playing in person? Or are you going to be playing online?
I don't like these are all like my personal friends, so we could play in person, but I've been thinking that we're gonna switch to online just so we can make it more regular.
No, that's fine. I know it can sometimes be a bit inconvenient.
Hmm.
I mean, as things are getting better, it's good. But I'm saying, like, if you're going to do it online, then, I mean, what you could literally do is just take a handful of, like, cards or index cards, label them, like, 1 through 12 or something like that, and then just have your friends say, all right, do me a favor, pick a number, and then, okay, and then based on what people pick, you know what I mean? Like, you could just make a reference note, like, all right, this person's not psychic, this person's not psychic, this person's infected, but they're not psychic yet.
Hmm.
That
I,
could be an explanation for all the creatures that they're seeing, is that the monsters aren't actually, well, the monsters are real in a sense in that they are physically physically manifested thought made
Hmm.
real and affecting the world itself. Um, I mean, heck, that could be how like you explain monsters. Like, if you really want to make a setting that's kind of crazy and weird, it could be that like people know that there are monsters out there. They've seen people be torn apart by them, but they not everybody knows, and it's really just because like people get infected. Some people are resistant, some people are not, and as a result, it's like people like the people could be focusing on the wrong thing. They could think it's magical, or they could think it's something else. When in
Hmm.
reality, no, it's just this weird path. Like either you can make it a pathogen, you can make it a viral agent. I mean, granted, I know COVID makes it a little bit weird, but I think like for something
Yeah.
like this, you kind of have to be like, all right, we're not like this. This is like, well, they don't need to know all that either. You just have to find a good way
Yeah.
of like
No. No. They.
describing the place in nondescript terms, and then you have that be the
Mhm.
reveal.
Yeah. I was thinking like I wouldn't make this new campaign too surreal or like make it where it's like,
No, screw that. You're making psionics. You want to make psychic
yeah,
powers? You got to lean hard into that stuff.
that's what's up.
Yeah, so
It's
you're
interesting
literally
to me
having
how in
like
like,
people are literally like their brains are overloading, and as a result, they are both gaining psychic powers, but they're creating monsters in the world, which is really just like their manifested thoughts made physical, but only to those who are infected or capable of even seeing.
so I'll be honest, John. When I was first coming up with like the sales pitch to myself for this campaign setting, I was thinking like Dark Sun meets JoJo's Bizarre Adventure meets Hunter x Hunter. And I think this added element that the like psionics is basically a disease, and by using it you're making the world worse.
But not
I
realizing it because nobody gets it.
Yeah, that's like, oh man, that's so much better than what I had originally thought.
We just went full on Uzumaki in this shit.
Yeah. Oh man, this is I was already excited to run this because like I think the setting was fine, and I was interested in like seeing how the new
Because also now
mechanics
the
I introduced
dragon,
was
because now
cool.
also now the dragon can be all kinds of crazy fucking weird. Of like, yeah, it's a dragon that doesn't follow any physical manifestation. You know what I mean? Like it has like multiple limbs, and like, but sometimes it doesn't have the same amount of limbs when it shows up.
Hmm.
It somehow it's somehow able to lift and propel itself, and yet like, its wings should you don't see its wings actually flapping. Like
Yeah, because it's not a real dragon. It
and it's
is the
perfectly fine to go like eldritch because it's like yeah it's cancer, it's like it's not um well it's not it's like weird like microbial stuff, and like and the way that like you could have a dream about something and yet like you can't remember the details when you try to remember it, but also something could be just off enough of like no I'm
Mhm.
in a school and I'm pantless, which everybody should be freaking out, but like they're not. So what's wrong with these people? That's how you could even have like mobs of like you can have a town where everybody looks perfectly normal, but nobody is like you realize like nobody is reacting to you, and like if you do something, it's not that they become violent or something happens. Like they just vanish, or like or like it's just a fun way to like you could if you really want to do research, you could do research on like you know thought experiments and like dream studies and things like that, and find out how do I take monster inspiration or like creatures and do this. You could have somebody who thinks that psionics are evil, and so they want to get rid of them. Well, no, again, people wouldn't know what psionics are. They
yeah,
just or those who do, like the very few, like no, I think people would have to know what psionics is, but nobody knows what causes it. And again, it could be that they think
yeah.
it's the wrong thing. They could think it's magical in nature, and yet, like some people, like those who are, like let's say tasked with keeping it under control, either could be completely resistant or they could be psychotic. There's a whole bunch of crazy ways you can go with this. And again, by
Wow.
having a player dynamic where not everybody is psionic, or some people don't start that way and then become
Hmm.
that way, you know what I mean? Like that same thing. You have 12 index cards. How many players are you gonna have?
4 players.
Four. All right, so you do 12. So this way you have like it's and all you need to do is just like shuffle them up a bit. So you have like
Mhm.
a certain number of them that are blank, A certain number of them that are, let's say, like, have an X, and some of them that have like a circle. If you're a circle, that means you're psionic. If you have an X, it means that you've been infected, and then it's up to you to determine how you want to manage that.
Mhm.
Or it
I
could be
like
that,
that.
like, as people interact with, because again, it would have to be like you'd have to have if you do that, you'd have to have a situation where people are fighting monsters that not everybody can see.
Yeah, that'd be crazy. Like I was okay with there being monsters in this because it's like a harsh world. But I was thinking like most of their enemies are going to be like the other people in the setting. But man, the idea of the players like seeing an otherwise invisible threat charging a town and knowing they're the only ones that can prevent the slaughter,
Do
but like
both.
people
You
are
could
going to think
totally
they're
do both.
crazy.
You could do both because you could have a situation. Think about the first time you're gonna have a fight where the players are being attacked by a monster that some of the players can't actually see.
Yeah,
So you have that situation where, and yeah, like, psionics can affect those who are uninfected.
yeah,
Because
because
it's, again, it's physically warping reality in space because of, like, just extreme concentrated psychic energy, which is
yeah,
basically
like
what psionics is.
we're kind of getting a little Breath of the Wild in here, which in that game, like all of the monsters basically are just manifestations of the malice of the world. So why can't there be monster? Why can't the monsters, by and large, just be manifestations of psionic feedback?
You could have good ones. You could have creatures who are, again, like thoughts of, like, kids and stuff like that. Although you can also
Mm-hmm.
have it where kids, their brains aren't fully developed, so it's like, yeah, they are making all kinds of stuff. But yeah, and,
Mm-hmm.
and again, those who are psionic could be like, conjuring things, or like, again, conjuring themselves, and like, it's the more that the more powerful they think that they are, the more powerful they're being. But again, it could just be whatever this symptom or disease is spreading.
Mm-hmm.
The question is whether you want to make it that it's a physical thing or something that people can't see. You probably make it where it's like maybe somebody with medicine. Like, if medicine was a skill or something like that, that could be something
Mm-hmm.
where, if somebody is willing to put together the dots, but there's so few doctors in this place.
Yeah, because a through line I wanted to have was like psionics can affect you whether you know they're affecting you or not. But if you are not awakened, you cannot perceive. You can't like perceive what's happening. You can just perceive like the effect of it.
Right.
Because like my thinking is like if someone has a psionic ability where they can like telekinesis, you're gonna be hit by the rock. You would just have no way of knowing that it was telekinesis that did that.
What, the rock would just fly?
As far as you know, yeah, the rock just flew at you. Or like maybe if the player was smart, they did like a telekinetic whirlwind to like just hurl the rock that way or something like that. If they wanted to be more subtle.
Now, psionics is not into the odd. You're planning on adding it.
Yes, I'm planning on adding it.
So I would keep it limited to, like, so it doesn't get too crazy. I would try to have it where there's, like, maybe, like, I don't know, like, let's say, like, six types. Well, so, well, do you have it developed now, or you still have to kind of come up with it?
I have it pretty much developed.
Okay.
Where like basically every psionic ability comes in three stages. There's the broad discipline for the kind of effect you're doing.
Hmm.
There is the talent, which is the like actual thing you're trying to do,
Hmm.
and then there's the manifestation, how it looks, how it like enters the world if you're awakened.
But
And every
what type of psionics is there? Like, how many different, different versions of telekinesis? Do you have
well,
elevation, teleportation, invisibility,
yeah.
pyrokinesis?
Well, I wanted to keep things open for the players because I wanted them to kind of like have a hand in developing their own abilities that they think suits their players. And my ideation behind this is you can achieve one effect in a variety of ways. So the basic schools, if you want to call it that, or rather the disciplines are there's enhancement, there is manipulation, creation, uh, transmutation, and one or two others that I can't recall right now. Kind of similar to the schools in D&D, or again, if you're a manga nerd, the types of Nen in Hunter x Hunter.
Okay.
So, like, once they pick the broad category of ability, they go into the specific kind of effect. So if they pick creation, they can be like, I generate fire, I generate water, I generate ice, I generate wind.
Right.
Or it can be like, I create a physical chain, or something like that. And then the manifestation is like, well, what happens when you create that fire? Is it like a fireball that you can throw, or is it just like you create a bonfire? When you create the chain, is it literally just a loose chain, or is it like a whip almost?
I get what you're saying,
Yeah.
but all right. So no, I mean, so like I'm glad that I was able to kind of
Oof. You
come
gave me
up
a
with
lot to
something.
work with.
Right, and by all means, like go nuts with it, like really, jump in the pool, full, cannonball style,
Hmm. Yeah, like, because I think a big thing, going back to our original topic of like, how do you make players enjoy starting a new campaign, a big thing might be changing the tone of your campaign. Like the one we're in right now is very much like mystery. Like there's an overarching mystery that they are compelled to solve. For this one, it seems like it's going to be more of like a psychological drama, or even like a horror campaign, where there's danger all around them, and they're the only ones that notice it.
Well, so let me ask you a question then. Let's go then another direction, based on what we've talked about and what we've kind of developed. What's the end of the campaign look like? Like, where is this ultimately going to end up going? Because if we just change the basically the like, if I just inadvertently change your whole campaign from like cool desert world where there's a dragon and psychics exist to there's this crazy super insane psycho virus that like makes people psychics like Fist of the North Star style, and like like what's ultimately like leading to, like, is it a confrontation with the dragon? Is it that there's something else entirely different and this is just all in the background of like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, there's this crazy story, but like there's other stuff going on. Is it related? Not really, but like, I mean, that could actually be an interesting campaign where all these crazy things that are happening, they're there, but it's almost like the crazy stuff is the red herring to what's actually happening,
Yeah.
or to what the campaign is, which could be like, like what's, like I said, what do you have in mind?
So I might have said this off camera, just off camera, but I like when you asked me, is this related at all to my previous campaign? I said no. That's technically a lie. What I'm trying to do is across a couple campaigns establish like a multiverse essentially. And my end game here is for the players to realize that the world they're playing in here exists in the same like grand cosmere to the campaign we played in previously. And I wanted the players to, in some crazy ass way, get the knowledge and ability to dimension hop, essentially.
Why though?
Because, well, the way this current campaign that they're in is running, is headed, it's going to end with them encountering uh, the person they're trying to find this whole time, and he will explain that he's been working on some machine that will allow whoever uses it to go to a different dimension. And it's a one way device. And he's like, if I use it, it'll kill me. So I need willing participants because I cannot die before I know this works. And I guess like I'm thinking more from the player experience in the grand scheme of things versus like their experience in this lone campaign. I want them to realize they're part of a grander whole. I think I don't know, like I guess I just thought it would be interesting to realize that. I didn't know. I don't know what end game I'm working to beyond that.
I guess that's the trick. Is if you want to connect everything all together, the problem is there needs to be some kind of a payoff for that. Because otherwise, it's like it's a neat little bow to put on things. But unless it's like, is the next campaign going to be about either the first campaign's characters or the second campaign's characters? Because otherwise, if not, then there's not really any benefit of tying the world other than just it's this fun thing that I did.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's my one of my bigger problems as a DM or as a game master. Like, I tend to think of things as, oh, wouldn't that be cool? Not, oh, this is a gratifying payoff for my players.
So I mean, like, let me ask you this: like, if I had to put it in one way, what was like the ultimate villain of the campaign that you had in mind? Was it the dragon, or was it something else?
Uh, I guess like the dragon would be like the after credits secret boss that they could go up against if they really wanted to. I wanted the ongoing conflict to be this war between the four families that they somehow get swept up into, probably because they turn into psionics and they realize, oh, everyone in these families has some kind of psionic ability.
All right. So I mean, I think you focus on that story, and
Hmm.
like you could the same way, like same thing like with the super secret ultimate boss. Why don't you have it where they could, if they really go out to the desert, they stumble upon the guy who's building the interdimensional machine. And I mean, again, it could be that like it could be that everybody he puts in the machine does die and he can't figure it out, and that's the reason why he hasn't experimented yet because he hasn't met anybody who's been able to survive. Doesn't even
Hmm.
necessarily need to be one way. It could be anybody who I strap into the machine, they die, but you can connect it to the psionic thing of like, well, no, it's just that their consciousness is just being separated from their body. You know, it's
Hmm.
like being. I mean, heck, if you really want to say like where the psionics came from, you could argue that it could be this guy messing around with stuff, created people turning into essentially, I don't know, like psychic mitochondria. That
Uh-huh.
oh my god, this guy invented a machine that turns people into the Force. If the Force was also super psychic cancer, that was also airborne.
Mike can never hear about this because he will strangle me.
Of like, yeah, like no, like so this world is like where they're trying to figure this out, and it could be like, yeah, like, and if anybody does it, like, yeah, no, that character is like, you can still make it where that character might be able to actually interact, but just like that person is dead, like they can't. I mean, if they really want to, like, well, maybe you could move their body, but it's like you can clearly tell that it's just a corpse, so it's like, so
Yeah,
it's not even just a corpse; it's just
maybe.
that there's no consciousness in the body anymore. It's like literally just taking your brain and separating it from your body.
I also like the idea that, like, because we're going with psionics as a disease, basically, if these characters choose to dimension hop as well, they're infecting a whole new plane of existence with this disease, and who knows what's going to happen to that place.
Well, I mean, again, it could just be that the fact that their consciousness escapes their body allows them. It's not even dimension hopping. It's just that they're able to travel between, like, almost like astral project, and as a
Hmm.
result, like, that's how they do the dimension hopping. Is like if anybody actually does try to do this thing, but again, it's not them. It's just their consciousness. So even if you do another
Yeah.
campaign, it could be like at some point you start passing notes around that's like, what is your consciousness doing in this new world? Like, you could make it
Hmm.
where, like, players of one thing became the villains of another one. Of like they all decided like, well, now I'm kind of omnipotent in some extent, so I'm gonna just have fun poking around with all these toys.
Yeah,
I think that, like, if
that's
you
definitely an
from what you're
angle.
talking about doing, I would say that the first session is actually them exploring the hospital without really knowing what it is. You
Hmm.
make it where one of the families makes a move on the neutral zone. The party members get involved. Maybe there's people that they know with, or a town that they're friends with that gets attacked, or that gets, like, waylaid, or even just constricted. And I was like, no, now you guys have to fight for us now. And if they try to fight back and reveal that they are psychic, or you basically do that thing of like, all right, as you introduce more stuff, you have like, here's, grounded bad stuff happening, but then here's also potential psychic stuff. And if you
Yeah.
really wanted to make it crazy, you could make it completely random on yourself of like, all right, I'm gonna have a couple of cards, and I'm gonna basically say it's a 1 in 6 chance of like something psychic happening to any encounter. Like maybe do it in advance, like plan a bunch of encounters, and then like,
Mm-hmm.
all right, I want to do one thing here, but I'll throw up something down and like, oh, this is gonna have some psychic stuff in it. This is gonna have some psychic stuff in it, and just kind of go from there. And again, if the players use it, they run the risk of exposing people to it because again, it's all thought cancer. And as a result, like the more that they use it, the more that it shows, the more that other people know, but the more likelihood that they get it, that they use it, that they expose more people to it, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
I just made your
No,
campaign 5 times more difficult to manage and run.
you did, but I like that because like we usually have quite large gaps between sessions, so this gives me stuff to work on.
Right.
No, this is great. I have so much more to do than I thought I was going to. Like I was already excited to get this campaign, but now I almost want to end the current one prematurely.
No,
I'm not going to
no,
do that.
just keep planning. In the meantime, you got plenty of time to like.
Yeah, we have like 4 or 5 sessions left in this one, so that's probably like at least half a year.
I mean, if you really want to be crazy with it, start seeding the psychic shit now.
Yeah, yeah. Like the current people run into a ghost, and
Yeah.
the ghost is somehow just like you say, like someone astral projecting. Oh man. Okay, I gotta get to writing this. This is cool shit.
Yeah, like they run into a ghost, and then like when they get to the other place, they find like somebody who's been like in a chair, and it's like, no, that's the ghost. That's the dude. Like,
Yeah. No, this is cool as hell. All right, John.
I
Thank you
just
very
blew your
much.
whole fucking mind.
You literally blew this new campaign idea wide open, and it's now endless possibilities. So yeah, I think that's going to be it for World Salad tonight. Like, I have so much to work with, and
Well, we still have like about 7 or 8 minutes. So, is there anything else that now that I've made your job harder that you could think of that you need me to help? Pitch or plan or develop for you? Like,
uh, not yet. I think in the very short term, one thing I want to do is like hammer out the mechanisms for how I want to run psionics. And I think once I have that more fleshed out, I'm gonna like shoot that document to you, and we can maybe like talk over that. I know this isn't a game design podcast, but I think it'd be interesting to talk about how you can use mechanics to help tell the story that you want to tell.
I get what you mean. Like, actually, like developing how the mechanics work in the sense of, uh, like, like, like developing the story further and stuff like that.
Yeah, because like I like it when you want to have some kind of like tone or mood for your game, and then the mechanics like help service that. Like the best example I can use for that is Dread, which is played by using a Jenga tower. It's a horror based game where the whole point of a horror game is to have like that rising tension of like, oh, when's the shoe gonna drop, like when are things gonna get bad.
All right. Well, I mean, you could have it where anybody who has psionics, there's always a slight blowback. There's a blowback possibility, and after a certain number of blowbacks, it's like, no, this person becomes catatonic, and or you go full scanners and their head explodes.
Yeah, I think we're gonna end up having something like that.
Oh God, that'd be
But
great. Like people's head exploding, but that also just like exposes a whole bunch more people to it.
yeah, it's like a mushroom giving off its
And
spores.
again, like everybody thinks it's something else, so nobody realizes that it's biological in nature.
Yeah, this is cool.
You can run into one crazy dude who like people call it like the golem or something like that, and it's just like a dude in like a biohazard suit. Like he's just smart enough that he's been able to kind of figure out how it works, but
Hmm.
like has this giant suit, but he can't take it off like him from the inside. And the problem is either a anybody who he could have help him get it off, or maybe not around anymore. B, oh, hold on, what? Yeah, just give me a minute. Sorry about that.
It's all right.
Say a minute or two. But yeah, no. So like you could, because now that you have this idea, like you could start like, coming up with like cool little characters and things to pepper into the place and whatnot.
Yeah, no, there's plenty to work on. Also, I thought you wanted to go for a half hour tonight. We're not
Yeah, but
we're
then
not we're
like
not we're not short.
well, like
We're going long.
we were talking about going for half an hour, and then like the problem is that you got me going, and then we came up with an amazing idea that I then
Yeah.
I had to flesh it out. So
Oh no, we had enough content tonight. How terrible.
no, it's not like it's bad having like the problem is like when you're doing a
No,
creative thing,
John,
it's
John, come on. I'm being facetious here.
but no, now you have psychic cancer dragon to figure out.
I sure as hell do have Psychic Cancer Dragon to help to flesh out. Yeah,
So
this is gonna be a campaign full of like wham, wham, wham. So yeah, cool shit. John, what do you have to plug for the fine people who are watching at home?
Rolled salad's still a thing. We're still doing that Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
John, this is World Salad.
Over coffee is a thing. We're doing that Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 6:30. Don't have anything else beyond that. Anything else you might want to promote?
Chris McDowell, the person who wrote Into the Odd and its spiritual successor, Electric Bastion Land. Look the dude up. He's got a blog full of free content to help you run games, even if you're not choosing to play one of the ones he wrote. It's really it's a very very good system. Very light, very hackable. Into the Odd is Electric Bastion Land. There's a bit more to it, but it's still light. It's fast and it's fun.
Cool. By that same thing, I would also recommend. I would recommend 2 Minute Tabletop. It's a blog and website that I follow that also has a Patreon where they come up with all kinds of cool tokens and maps and stuff on a regular basis. So it's 2 Minute Tabletop.
Cool. Sounds good.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us. And again, we'll be back in. Well, we might go to a slightly different model. If we do not before the next episode, we'll be back June 7th. So, one way or the other, you will see us again. Thank you so much for watching us and enjoy the rest of your night.
Be good to each other.